As we welcome 2025, it's my pleasure to have one of my friends and somebody who I've done quite a bit of work with, Reshmi Das from Unilever. Uh, Reshmi, we welcome you to Sensory Moments, which is a podcast to talk everything about sensory. And I think we and the viewers of this podcast have a lot to learn from you. Thank you, Reshmi, for taking time out. Hey, Reshmi, thank you for coming on the Sensory Moments podcast. Great to have you over here. Uh, for for the viewers, Reshmi works with Unilever. In very light terms, she's almost a furniture. I mean, she's been there for years in Unilever, so it's there. I mean, one shouldn't take these chats too seriously, but yeah, she's been there in Unilever in consumer technical insights for thing has worked across categories, across roles. So thank you, Reshmi, for taking time out and getting on the podcast.
Thank you, Sandeep. It's been a pleasure to be a part of Sensory Moments.
Thank you. Would you want to introduce yourself better than what I did? Bad.
Sure. I'll go and introduce myself. So my name is Reshmi, and I've been in consumer insights ever since I started pretty much working after my MBA school. And consumer insights actually happened to me by chance. I never thought that, after doing a marketing specialization, probably I was thinking of getting into a marketing side of things or advertising side of things, which really excited me. But I got, recruited by IMRB. And it was my campus placement. So I just happened to start my career with market research as a quant researcher in IMRB, where I spent pretty much 3 years researching cigarettes, although I never smoke and I do not absolutely like people who get addicted to smoking as well. But I spent the first 3 years of my life researching cigarettes. With ITC and BAT, British American Tobacco. And thereafter, I joined Unilever in consumer technical insights. So even when I was applying for this role, I was not quite sure what does technical insights really mean. What it really means in simple terms is that we in Unilever we have CMI and CTI partners R&D. We are kind of the researchers who sit beside the people who actually create the products, discover new technologies, and work on completely new innovations. And the job of consumer technical insights is to actually represent the voice of consumer in an R&D forum. Yeah, so we are both. It works two ways. We tell our R&D scientists, innovators, what they should be doing, what are the new trends, and at the same time also evaluate new innovations and new products which they are making, with the intent of getting the best products to consumers which they love buying day in and day out. So that's pretty much the job in a very simplistic term. We basically help to create products which consumers love, and that's what we want. That consumers should buy the products made by our company, yeah, and it should be better than what our competitors prepare.
Yeah. I have two questions which are not related, so I don't know which one to jump to. But
Sure.
okay, we'll come to your what work you do right now. But how tough was it to jump from MBA to research, which is not that tough, but yeah, dealing with cigarettes in a category, and then to jump to technical insights?
I would say it wasn't very, very difficult, but because what I have been doing and the key linkage between all my roles has been specifically focusing on the product development part of it. Yeah, because if you really think about it, yeah, so we all know there are 6 P's to business, but honestly, in my view, this P, the product P, is like a cornerstone of whatever we create. Yeah, so think about it. Yeah, advertising, it can attract you to a new product, but if you don't like that product, you're not going to buy it again, right? So this product, which is a part of the 6 P's, is very important, which ensures whether you are going to sustain in the market or not, right? And even when I was doing, like, I was a quant researcher, and I was researching cigarettes. So cigarette is also like a product. So I mean, the same linkage that I have been carrying throughout my career of like 20 odd years now, is about researching about products, is about figuring out what can make the products better. Yeah. So that's the linkage. And honestly, the shift wasn't, of course it was a different environment, because from a research side to an organization which manufactures products, it is very different. Because when you are a researcher and you're working in a market research company, you are only looking at like a very small portion of the entire product development cycle. So your role is only to do one piece of research, which, imagine it's like a big puzzle, and you are just doing one piece of that puzzle. But when you are working, on the manufacturer side, then you are pretty much looking at the whole puzzle in its entirety. And of course, product is a very important linkage of that puzzle, which puts the entire thing together. Yeah. So when we say product, it's just not restricted to what goes inside. It's also about, the entire package, which is what you're going to talk about, the product, which is also a part of the consumer technical insights function. So what you're going to say, what you're going to claim on the pack, that is also a part of the role that I do. And it's also about the packaging. So how the packaging looks like, how the packaging feels like. So that's also very much a part of the P, which is one of the six P's.
Okay. Uh, I'm still going to park one more question, but how do you feel one of the things which is said nowadays is that the product is the most critical part of the marketing element, because in the age of Instagram, or in the age of attention deficit, because there is attention deficit, we all have a lot to do. We all have a lot of things to see, a lot of reels to see, a lot of reels to do. So a lot of media to consume, a lot of media to create. We don't really see ads as we were doing 15 years back. So if your product doesn't get right, you can generate trials, but you will not generate a repeat
Repeat.
purchase.
Exactly the point. So I mean, the advertising and the communication and all the reels and all the show business that you see can only get the consumer to buy the first pack. Yeah. So but that's also very important. I'm not at all saying that that's less important, but because if you don't try my product, you are never going to figure out how it is, and that's the next step. Yeah. But then so that's about trials. But the repeat purchase, which is very, very important, is largely driven by what was the experience of that person with that product. Yeah. And it's very important to create, like, the brand persona. So it goes hand in hand. Yeah. It's not just what you see. What you see is one part, but what you then feel and what you then experience, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is all about the sensorial. Yeah, because we are experiencing the world through the sensories, right? So you have to experience the product with the sensory of the product. Yeah, so that's the relationship that you build with the product, and hence with the brand, and you kind of get addicted to it. So there are lots many examples that we can think about, wherein we are actually addicted to a certain flavor or to a certain fragrance or to a certain taste, and which is the key thing which makes us go back to that brand again and again. So the biggest example that I can think about is Maggie. We've all grown up with Maggie. It's been there for the last, I don't know, like 40, 50 years of our lives. Yeah. Ever since we were kids, and then our kids, they are having the same Maggie, and we just can't get over it. Yeah. So many other players have come up with so many other different products in the same segment. Yeah. But Maggie rules it, and it's because of, if it's because of that distinct taste which people have got now addicted to. And we can figure out the difference from, let's say, a Maggie, or like a Nor or a Top Ramen or any other noodle. It's that distinct taste which is almost like unmissable. And Maggie doesn't need to advertise much. They used to do it in the past, but now they don't need to, because the product itself is the biggest advertisement, and the taste itself is the biggest salesman, which will entice people to buy that. It doesn't matter what else you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in a, I was teaching, I've been teaching, and I was in an education institute in Pune. And for the evening snacks for 300 students, the snack was Maggie.
And everybody loves it. I mean, you can have it, you can have it in Ladakh, and you can have it in Kanyakumari. I mean, it is so much a part and parcel of our lives, and we just can't think of sometimes snacking moments without Maggie.
So, how was it coming to the sensory world and the consumer technical insights without actually having a technical degree? You're not from ICT, you're not from CFT,
No, no, no,
RI.
no, no, no. I am not. I am not. So it's yes. So which is a bit of a I would say that you don't really need like a technical degree to do like a product research, because my job is not to write, like, discover new things. My job is to make things simpler for consumers. So if you talk about claims, so my job is to figure out, what is the, if I say something, if I make any claim, so be it like removing 100 stains, or giving you freshness that lasts long. What is the data support that we have? Yeah, so we can't just say anything that we want. It has to be based on science, and it has to be based on facts and figures. So the technical part of the role is basically to figure out what is that, what's the data support, what's the fact based on which we can claim this for the consumer. And it's also a little bit of a, it's a bit of a borderline kind of a thing, because sometimes we may use words, or we might use expressions which has to be scientifically correct, but at the same time it has to be appealing to consumers. So I'll give you a simple example. So we often used to say we are unbeatable, we are an unbeatable brand. So if you think about the word unbeatable, you would think that we are superior, but unbeatable doesn't mean superior. Unbeatable just means that you are as good as anybody else and nobody can beat you. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a trick, which is, and you don't really need like a science degree. It's pretty much commonsensical. So it's a bit of a creative play of words, and understanding the consumer nuances to figure out what is that right claim that we should do on the pack, which will make it believable, which will make it unique, and which will make it relatable for the consumer. So it's a bit of science, but the amalgamation or the marriage of science with what will actually please consumers, or what is that insight, what does my consumer want to see on that pack, that amalgamation or that marriage is what we are trying to do in the technical insights part of it. And the rest of it is honestly just product research, which is your product development research. Traditionally, we've been doing it through quants, quals, sensory research. Yeah, so that's there is not so much of technicalities involved in it. It's pretty much statistics, which we all learn in market research.
So, how is the experience of, rather than taking it to brand managers, marketing managers, taking it to the hardcore R&D folks who are supposed to be slightly more immune to such things and say, we know what we're going to do with the product?
So I mean, so I often get, so the biggest, let's say, the biggest, I wouldn't say issue, but the challenge that we have is to translate the consumer preference into a technical language, for my let's say my R&D colleagues to then kind of go and design a product. Because when you think about preference, we hear so many different things, right? So like, yeah, we all know about market segmentation. So we know that not everybody is going to like everything. So for example, if we talk about, let's say, fragrances, yeah. So of, or let's say flavors, yeah, because I worked 5 years in oral care, where one of my key job was to figure out what flavors do we put in. Yeah, because toothpaste is the biggest sensory driver is the flavor that we put in the toothpaste. So now there is, in if I were to translate this into a technical language, so it means that I have to ask my flavorists or the people who supply flavors to us to give us something which everybody likes. But honestly, there is nothing in there, that's almost like a target that you can never achieve, because you can never make something which everybody likes in the market. Yeah, so the best that you can do is to figure out that niche that you are going to service, and you have to design something which will be liked by that niche cohort of consumer. Yeah, who is your target audience and who you want to pitch it to. Yeah, so so it is a very, very challenging exercise to figure out, who are these people, and why is it that they like certain things and they dislike certain things, how to identify them, and then how to pitch, let's say, a product specifically for that cohort. So that I feel is the most challenging uh, job that we have to do within this entire space. Yeah, because preferences are very, what you like is not what I'm going to like. So how do I like really craft a brief which is going to satisfy majority of the people, and most often than not, it's about satisfying majority of the people rather than satisfying everybody, which is the trick. And as a manufacturer, if you set out on a task to win the entire world, you've had it. Like, you probably will never be able to do that. Yeah, but you need to know who is that niche that you want to target, and then design your product and design your communication to basically target that segment.
So as a market, as coming from a company which is a market leader in a lot of category and has a lot of big mass brands, saying that
Mhm.
you have to have cohorts
Of
sounds.
course, of course, we have to have cohorts, and so if you've heard, Sanjeev Mehta, who was our previous CEO, he had bought in this entire, you can almost say, this is a very Unileverized terminology, which is called winning in many Indias, which is the WIMI strategy, which we have been following for a lot of our brands. Which means that, even if I look at a country like India, although, we have global brands and we have presence in a lot of other different markets, but when it comes to India, India is not like one. It is many Indias. What works in North is not going to work in South. And although it means a lot of complexity from our supply chain perspective, but that is what has been one of the winning principles. So we call it, we call it good complexity. Yeah, so nobody wants complexity in their organization, but sometimes you have to bend those rules to actually try and give consumers what they want. Yeah, because that's the entire rule of the game. If you can satisfy people, and if you can design products which is suiting their taste and preferences, which is very different across the different parts of India, that has been, well, like one of the cornerstone principles, which has helped the big brands become bigger in India, I would say.
So we talked about supply chain complexities and your order quantity goes down because if you're making five different light boys or five different Lux, then your order values are going to order round in the factory is going to be less.
Yes.
So wouldn't your cost of production jump exponentially? How do you, in the market like India, which is extremely cost conscious, how
It
does
it
anyone?
it does to a certain extent, but you have to compensate that with, the additional volume of business that you would do. And which is why it is called good complexity, because what you get as a return has to surpass the additional cost that you have to put in to manage the complexities. Yeah, so it's a risk and reward, and and of course we don't have it for every other brand, right? So we don't have it for every other product. So we are going to do these customization only for products and let's say brands which really need it, and where we think that adding in this complexity will give us a competitive advantage in that market, and will actually help to surpass the additional costs that we will incur, and possibly we are not even able to do this for every other product or brand because of the fact that you just mentioned. Yeah, so we can probably do it when you have multiple factories. Yeah, because there is a lot of wastages if you have to change over from from one particular let's say a formulation to another formulation. So let's say I have two different fragrances for Lux that you're talking about. Yeah, so it's the same Lux brand, it's the same packaging, it's the same communication, but what goes inside the bathing bar is gonna have like a different fragrance, and it is a huge thing to manage all this complexity even in the supply chain as well as in our factories, because let's say you want to change over from one fragrance to another, so the entire system has to be washed. Yeah, because we can't have any trace of that previous fragrance, and these changeover causes a lot of productivity loss for us. So these can be only managed by smart sourcing. So sometimes we kind of we have multiple factories, so we make only one kind of product in one factory and the other kind in another factory. So those are the tricks of the trade which our supply chain colleagues will be able to kind of help us out with. But yes, in terms of principles, that's what we really want to follow, because we believe in giving the consumers what they want, uh, in order to make us an unmissable brand.
And driving your competitors mad.
Not really, but our competitors, I mean, they can also do the same, right?
No, they can't because they don't have the same volumes.
Yes, it's a volume game. So, like I said, we can't be doing that for every. So there are these conscious calls and these, because we would have loved to create customized product for every person that we service, but that of course comes at a cost, and probably our market is not really evolved at at that particular level as well, because customizations will come at a cost. So I
Absolutely.
don't think the Indian consumers, or let's say the Indian market is right now at that stage where they can afford this cost unless it's in a very premium segment. And I'm guessing that's the future. Yeah, so I am guessing more and more we will get into the world of customization once it becomes more cost effective as
Yeah,
well.
the cost effective part is it's also that the marketers to have the guts to increase the prices, because it's in India, nobody wants to increase prices, everybody wants to play it safe. But you can't do it if your cost of production is going to go up.
Mm, that's right. That's
That's
right.
that's a challenge, because if you're gonna sell it at the same price and your cost of production goes up by 10%, then
Mm.
your margins get hit, and after some time, the share market has some feedback on what margins you're making. So moving on from those things to more topics dear to our heart, which is Century.
Yes, which
So,
is sensitive.
what are the common myths that you've seen in your career around Sensory, and any story?
So, mhm. So I think that people. I mean, when you think of a product, the first thing that people think about is the efficacy, right? Is the product effective? Is it going to do the job that it is supposed to do? Yeah, but now if you really think about it, we are no longer in there is very little differentiation in terms of efficacy that we can play around, because for especially the categories where we operate. Yeah, so let's say a bathing bar. What is the job of a bathing bar? It is just supposed to give you, it's just supposed to clean your body and make it fragrant. That's it. all the bathing bars are supposed to do this, and I'm guessing all of them probably will give you the same cleaning. Yeah. So where is the difference? Why would I buy a Lux or a Pierce or or a Synthol? But then the key differentiation factor is what? It's finally it's the sensory of the product. It's the fragrance. It is not going to clean your body, but you will buy a certain brand or a certain fragrance because you like it. Yeah, that's about it. So to me, I think when your question was like, what are the myths around sensory? People actually don't think sensory, but finally what we are selling is sensory. We are not selling the efficacy, because there is no differentiation pretty much in most of the categories, FMCG categories, if you think about it. Yeah, they use pretty much the similar kind of ingredients, they talk about the same benefits. It's really the sensory which is where your consumer is deciding. Yeah, the choice of whether I'm going to buy A or B is finally boiling down to the sensory of the product, whether they are liking the sensory or whether they are not liking the sensory. So for me, we might call it product research, but honestly, what we are doing is sensory research. Yeah, so we may not term it like that. We may not term and the biggest myth to me is to think that sensory is just running sensory panels. Yeah, so I mean, typically that's the impression that, at least in the market research world, that's what we are more attuned to. So whenever somebody talks about sensory, we think about, okay, it's a sensory panel and they're going to give some ratings to certain products to kind of discriminate them, and we will get a better read of the sensory. Yes, it is the the cornerstone stone of sensory science. But what we are really doing in our day-to-day lives is we are talking about sensory, and we are dealing with the sensories of the product, which we are researching all the time without really calling it out as sensory. We call it out as product research, but we are indeed looking at what are the sensory codes. Yeah, what are the sensories which consumers are preferring, and what are the sensory do's and what are the sensory don'ts. What is it that we should be doing and what is it that we should not be doing? And in my experience, I have seen many examples of where sensory don'ts sometimes become more important than sensory do's, because if you I mean, the differentiation, wa- we always want to create products which people like. Yeah, and that's the thinking, that we should give them a better fragrance, we should give them a better sensory, we should give them a better skin feel, or it could be a better flavor. But sometimes we don't we kind of underplay the things that we should not be doing, and that can sometimes become a boomerang for you. Yeah, and lead to a lot of the share losses in the market. So sensory it's a very sensitive thing. So one is about the do's, and it's also important to be mindful of the areas that you should not go for. And yes, and some of the biggest mistakes, or some of the biggest failures often happen when we get into an area where we are not supposed to go. Yeah, so we go into the sensory don't zone.
Okay. But do people at an overall senior management level understand sensory that well, or it's just do something and give us a product which works well?
Yeah, I mean, they don't, I mean, maybe they don't talk about sensory science, or they don't. I think people do understand that, sensory is something which is very, very important. And, you have to get it right to kind of have a winning product in the market. I think that at least in our organization, that consciousness is, I would say it is very much there. It's not just about do anything in the product, because we also want to know what is the insight behind whatever we are trying to do in the product. Yeah, so there has to be some some logic for which we are designing for. Let's say we are trying to address something in the market which is either not present, or there is a gap, or there is a preference, or there is a like a trend. So it is not just design something. It has to come with a logical, a logical analysis, and an insight,
Okay.
which leads to the change.
Yeah. So you are, if you can give us some case studies or story, or you can,
Sure, sure.
but
I
where Sensi has been used to create product differentiation.
um uh, uh, of course, of course. So, like, I think, I mean, let me think about. I think everything is about a sensory differentiation, which makes products different. So I'll talk about the don'ts, because everybody talks about the do's. So I'll talk about the don'ts, and I'll give you some simple examples of, when I was working in oral care. So we were doing a research, in one of the markets, and the job was to basically make a product which is superior to your competition product. And we went about, we did since this was toothpaste, so we did a flavors research, and we found a flavor which people love, especially the segment which loves it. And then we were very confident that once we make the product with the winning flavor, we should be able to win, because in a toothpaste, people can't really judge the efficacy. Yeah. So toothpaste is all about, I'll give you anti-cavity. Like, how can you even know whether, or let's say a simplistic term, I'll give you, like, protection against cavity because I'm killing the germs in your mouth. You have no way to know whether the toothpaste is really killing the germs or not. Yeah. It's invisible to you. So what you basically look at is, okay, is your teeth is getting clean or not? Is the teeth is feeling clean? And the second one is, of course, if you are liking the flavor or not. Yeah, whether your mouth is feeling fresh. And that is the indicator of whatever. Yeah, germ kill, anti cavity, yeah, which is the promise that we make to consumers. So in a blind test, so, and we often research products in blind. So in a blind test, you don't even know what the proposition is. So it's pretty much a toothpaste with a flavor, and you are telling me whether it'll work or not. So we went into the testing, and we came back with a sea of reds. Yeah. So the product that we had designed with this winning flavor was absolutely, like, it was a big failure, and it was like all reds. Yeah. So whatever attribute we look at, whether it's cleaning, whether it's flavor, whether it's efficacy, everything was like a very low score for this product, and we were like foxed. So what happened? Because according to us, we did everything right. So what really went wrong, and why do consumers dislike it so much? Yeah. So had we been like, okay, more or less, similar to what we had, or to competition, then we would have still, like, we would not have thought about it so much, but it was like a sea of reds. So when we went in, and then we kind of figured out that, well, while making this new flavor, what they had actually done, they had changed the consistency of the product. And so, like, the viscosity, like the thickness of the product. And we had actually made it thicker than what it was before. Yeah. And it was actually done with the good intention, because if the product is more thicker, it causes more abrasion. So, like, because you're doing a cleaning job. So if it is a thicker product, it will cause more friction, and it'll clean better. So it was done with a good intent. But what happened in the practical world is that, because it was so thick, it was not sticking on the toothbrush. So you put it, and it used to fall off. So if you tilt the toothbrush, it is so thick that it's not settling in your bristles, and it is just going to fall off. And people did not like it at all. So of course, we are a value conscious market. So people thought this product is of no value, because it is continuously falling off my toothbrush. So it's not going to give me value. So they scored everything low. Yeah. So, and that small change in consistency, which we had done, and it was not a very big change either. So it was like a very small change, which later we realized when we had looked up the sensory panel scores. And that kind of revealed to us, because the sensory panel is really sensitive, right? And it's an objective evaluation as well. So that objectivity in the data, because it was an objective evaluation, and we were able to see attribute by attribute what was the key difference between the products, and we saw, oh gosh, this is quite different in terms of the thickness of the product. And then we came to the and then we looked, and then we actually found out that people had actually we also put in some just right questions at the end of the questionnaire, which we never usually look, because the just right questions are always, whatever you do, people say, yeah, it's just right, it's just right. And then we saw a lot of low scores on the just rights when it came to the thickness of the product. So we connected the dots. So honestly, sensory saved the day. So we learned that from the sensory panel, that the product thickness was the problem area. And yep, and we fixed it, and we were through. So I mean, this was one of the it was like a thought starter for me as well. And this was one of the researchers which really pointed out to me the importance of sensory, especially in products. So I can give you a lot of other examples as well, where sensory plays a big role. And I think, so for me, it's all about sensory. It's all about the sensory do's and the sensory don'ts. Uh, and you will be sometimes surprised to figure out that what we believe is not always true, because consumers have very different interpretation. And it's about connecting these dots. It's connecting the objective measurement that you get from the sensory of the panel to the subjective assessment that the consumer is doing at their end, to get a holistic picture of what actually people prefer and what they don't. Yeah, because unless and until you are able to quantify it, because it's also important for you to quantify, okay, so what is the thickness that is the ideal thickness? Should it be very thin? Even if it is very runny, they will not like it. Even if it is very thick, they don't like it, right? So what is that right level of thickness? That has to be quantified. And what sensory allows us to do is allows us to quantify these metrics, which is easy for me then to give a brief to my product development team. And then we said, okay, whenever you design products in future, you have to be within this zone of, let's say, thickness or consistency of products, and which is easily transferable to a number, yeah, that you can measure, because you can measure consistencies of products, because it's viscosity. So you have methods to measure the viscosity of the product. So then we can come up with a golden rule to say that, okay, for this market, this is the viscosity range within which you should operate, because otherwise there is a chance of you falling into the trap.
I have a trick question up next, and
Sure.
but if you get 2 minutes with your board or a minute with your board, and you to
Uh-huh.
explain them why they should spend time understanding sensory, what would you tell them?
Oh gosh, I will just give them some examples of big disasters which has happened because we didn't get the sensories right of certain products. Yeah, so I think I really think that it's sometimes difficult to convince people of sensories. And the best way to do it is to tell them that if you don't get this right, then it's also about making sure that you don't do any wrongs. Yeah, rather than getting it in your race to get everything right, you have to also make sure that you don't get anything wrong. And there are so many misses which can actually happen, because when you change anything, especially in a product, or like, it's all interrelated. So when I change A, sometimes B, C, D also gets impacted. Yeah. So when we are trying to fix something, or when we are trying to address something, we have to make sure that we are not, breaking anything, which is already considered a good part of the product. So that is often a big challenge, because everything has an impact on everything else. So So it's a trick question, and it's difficult for us to also kind of convince people on sensory. But I would say that, if you don't have it, then there is a bigger chance of you to the penalty that you pay is gonna be far more than the advantage that you're gonna get without having it altogether.
We can have a longer discussion on it, but I think we'll not keep you. But yeah, because there is also a school of thought where some people, especially entrepreneurs, who understand or have the pulse of the market, have worked against big corporates, and just
Uh-huh.
by having the pulse of the market in consumers, created products which have beaten uh, huge MNCs in India, in China, by having the pulse of the market. So where they've not had extensive
I mean,
sense.
of course. The biggest example that I can think about is Patanjali. They've given us nightmares. Yeah. So the Patanjali toothpaste. So when I was working in oral care, so they came up with a extremely obnoxious product, which nobody would like, but everybody would buy. Yeah, because of the proposition. So that's the pulse of the market. Yeah, because they knew that the proposition will play a bigger role than the product sensory. They didn't care about the sensory. I personally do not. I can't brush with Patanjali products at all, because it is so very. It's extremely strong, and children can't even use it. But they turned that product negative into a positive, because it's like, you are having a bitter medicine. Yeah, so medicines are supposed to be bad. You're not supposed to enjoy the sensory experience. Yeah. But then look what happened to them today. There is only, like, they went, and then there was a drop as well, because you can't sustain to that, because at the end of the day you also have to be uh, you know deliver the efficacy, which people are going to realize in the longer run. So maybe you won't realize it in the short run, but in the longer run, if people don't find it efficacious, they are going to slowly move away from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. Yeah. So in certain of course, there are always exceptions to the rules, and there are these startups, who apparently, like you mentioned, they knew the pulse of the market. They knew that it's going to work, and they did not pay any attention to make the sensory of the product either pleasurable, or, let's say they did not follow any codes, any of the established sensory codes in the market, and still they've
In
made a big impact in the market.
some, I would give you an incident, and I will give you a product category which has consistently beaten IHL product, and but where the person actually, he has had a great hold on fragrances. I'm talking fog.
Fog, yep.
Fog has
Hmm.
had great fragrances, and there was just one person, the owner. Now he's no longer there because they've sold it off to a VC. Whitney was, uh, he decided what fragrances. He worked with the fragrance company, and he decided the
Hmm.
fragrances, and the fragrances have worked. Otherwise, Fog would have slipped long back. So, but
Yes.
yes, proposition
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
different and things. Yes, we can
Yeah.
debate,
But
discuss.
yeah, but absolutely, absolutely. But fog was not just about fragrances. No, it's also about the proposition. It's about the
Proposition.
value,
Yeah.
and they talked about, they absolutely tapped the, it's the pulse of the consumer. We are a value conscious market at the end of the day, so
Yeah.
they
But
knew
he
what
worked on
exactly
the,
to talk about.
he did the proposition right and he did the fragrance right. So it's not just, it's a combination of both which makes you a winner because it's still a number one
Both,
brand
yes,
after so many years. It's not fallen
absolutely.
off. I don't particularly like Dankanti, and we can talk
Mm.
Dankanti for quite some time, but uh, so my last question to you is, do you have any message for why people should take this up as a profession, the sensory research, consumer product research, and what would be your advice to them?
Uh, so first of all, I would say that, it's about whether you actually like to do this or not, because as a product researcher or as a sensory researcher, it would mean that you have to kind of love what you are doing. Yeah. So if you have interest in this field, I would say that this is going to be something which is going to become even bigger. And why so? Why so? Because like I was saying, that it's no longer about efficacy. A lot of the categories have were becoming like commodities, and we are only looking at sensory differentiation to revive those categories. And so now I work in beauty and well-being, and in skincare specifically. So to give you an example of in this category, we used to just have creams and lotions, and now we have so many different formats of products, from serums to water creams to gels to souffles to mousse, you just name it. And what's the key? So everything is supposed to do the same job, pretty much the same job. Everything is supposed to moisturize, everything is supposed to, like, take care of your skin, make you look more beautiful at the end of the day, right? But look at the differences in the formats that we are having, and this is only going to be more and more, because consumers are looking for let's say novelties, and they are looking for pleasurable sensories, because in terms of efficacy, pretty much all of them will be, I'm sure all of them are very good products, and they are efficacious. Yeah, but then consumers are looking for new sensory experiences to basically enjoy the world. Yeah, so if you look at any other category as well, even if you look at food or anything else, so we are actually going forward into the days and times when we are trying to create more experiences for people. And when we say experiences, it's about sensory experiences, because people experience the world through their senses.
Yep.
Yeah, so it is going to be something which is going to be quite a big thing, with more product formats and with more sensory explorations happening at a very faster pace, which is which is totally transforming the environment, and which is totally transforming in the products that we see around us today. So it's a very, I think it will be a very booming field in near future. And specifically, if I talk about India, we are actually seeing interests even in the field of sensory science, which was never so much in the past, but we are seeing some growth as well in sensory science, and because of the same reason, because now you are focusing more on designing superior sensory experience for your consumer, which is why it is going to see a growth in the near future, is what I believe.
Thank you so much. Anything else that you want to add?
No, it has been a nice conversation with Sensory Moments, and whoever wants to pursue a career in Sensory, I would like to wish them all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Reshmi. Thank you. Talk soon.
Thanks, Sandeep. Talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for being part of our podcast. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you like to know more about Sensory, please comment below. Till then, stay tuned for more episode of Sensory Moments.